Have you ever said that you're just not in the mood to have sex, or complained of being too tired for sex, or said that you could go the rest of your life without sex, or complained of your partner's high sex drive, or felt like you dissociated during sex, wondered if you're asexual, or said that you desire sex sometimes, but then when it's time to have sex, you're no longer in the mood? Well, today we're going to be talking about low desire in men and women. And what we're going to be talking about today are just some ideas that are going to be able to help you deal with this issue. And we're specifically talking about the desire aspect. If you're interested in finding out more about the rest of the process, I have more classes that you can take on arousal and pleasure and orgasm, and I encourage you to take a look at those. So, if we haven't met, my name is Rivka Sidorsky. I'm an ASEX certified sex therapist, an ASEX certified sex therapist supervisor, an IAPST certified psychosexual therapist, and an IAPST certified psychosexual supervisor. I'm the owner and director of Rivka Sidorsky and Associates, a group private practice in Maryland, serving Maryland, Virginia, DC, and New Jersey. So, let's talk about a couple of stories of some things that might be um, feel familiar to you or something you might be able to relate to. So Julie complains of low sexual desire. Dan always initiates sex, and Julie doesn't even try to get into it anymore. She states that she does it for him, but honestly could go months or years without sex. So this is an example of a woman that's kind of just having what I would call pity sex or duty sex. She's just doing it for him. So this is somebody who we might see commonly, and she's gonna be presenting, complaining about low sex drive. Okay. Another example is Sarah. Sarah also has low sex drive. When she does put in the effort and is in the right headspace, she can enjoy herself. This is infrequent and she never initiates sex. Most of the time, when her husband suggests sex, she states that she's not in the mood. She's a mother of three and works outside the home. So this is an example of somebody who um, barely has sex drive, but when she is in the right headspace and she puts in the effort and she puts in, she really tries, she can get into it. Okay, so let's keep these two women in mind, and maybe these are some people that you can relate to. So, low sex drive. It's estimated that it affects approximately 1 in 10 women. It is the most common sexual dysfunction. And it's important to think about, what's abnormal or dysfunctional within the context of your own culture and religion and age group. And so there's a lot of relativity to this issue. And most people will have some day-to-day variability in their sexual interests, based, and in their lifespan, as well as in their, day to day, depending on how much stress they're under or life events. So during a period of time when you're gonna have more um, stressors, maybe financial stressors or work stressors or relationship stressors, then you're going to typically see less sex drive during those periods of time. And then during times when things are easier, or you're more relaxed, or you're on vacation, things are going well, you might experience some increase in sex drive. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about what is evidence-based to actually help increase sexual desire. Not a lot. So, what study participants tried? Participants tried increasing communication, trying to meet the partner's needs, having sex without desire, scheduling sex, lingerie, date night, etc. Now, in this study, we were talking about specifically sexual desire. Okay. Now, there is not a lot of evidence for what can help desire. I'm going to say that again. There's not a lot of evidence for what can help sexual desire. And what we're talking about in this is spontaneous desire, just spontaneously wanting sex. Now, that doesn't mean there's nothing we can do about this. There's a lot we can do, but I want to just validate that if you're waiting for the mood to just strike you, that's what we're talking about here. The mood to just strike you. Now, is there a lot we can do to increase that? Not a lot. Okay? So we have to work with what we can. What can we work on? I'm here to tell you there's a lot of hope. You can enjoy sex. You can initiate sex. You can get aroused. You can have an orgasm. All these things. You can have a great romantic and erotic life. But sexual desire is barely treatable. There are things we can do, but it's not as much as what we can do for the other stuff. Okay? So, what can we focus more on? We can focus more on motivation and responsive desire. I'll talk more about what that means later. We can focus more on alleviating sexual breaks. We can talk more about couples dynamics, communication. We can work more on arousal and pleasure, and we can increase relaxation. Okay? These are the things that you can control. So if you're sitting here and you're saying, Rivka, on any given Tuesday night, it's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, and I'm just not feeling sex drive. What can I do about that? I'll say, well, I'm not really sure that any of the stuff that we're going to talk about is going to make you at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock desire sex. But if we work on these things, you can have a great sexual relationship, you can enjoy sex, and things will be so much better for you. So let's talk about what you can control. Okay. Let's talk about the dual control model. What turns you on and what turns you off? Okay. So for a lot of women, there is sexual gas and sexual breaks. Okay. So sexual gas pedal might be like your husband is cleaning the house, putting the kids to bed, um doing the dishes, maybe buying you flowers, maybe giving you alone time, maybe spending time with you, maybe you really like a back massage or hugging or a head massage. These are some gas pedals, things that work for you. Okay? Think about what are some things that work for you. And then there's sexual breaks. Sexual breaks might be if you guys are arguing a lot, or you don't get enough help in childcare, or you're doing the dishes and your husband like pinches your butt or grabs your boobs. These are things that I hear about that might be like brake pedals, where these are not things that are working for you. These are things that are make you go slamming on the brakes. Okay? So think about in your life, like what are some things that make you rev your engines and make the car move a little? And then what are the things that make the car slam on the brakes? Some people are really heavy on the gas. Some people are really heavy on the brakes. Some people, so it's just, that's okay. And we just have to know what is it that works for you. Okay. If you don't remember anything else that we talk about today, I want you to just remember this. When you're standing in the kitchen, cleaning up, loading the dishwasher, and packing lunches and paying bills. And all of a sudden, you think to yourself, huh, it would be nice to have sex later. Okay, that is an example of spontaneous sexual drive. Now, you might be here in this lecture today because you're saying, I never feel that way. And I'm here to tell you that's okay. That's okay. If you never or almost never or rarely spontaneously desire sex. And what I mean by spontaneous is that nothing happened to you. You are just going through the grocery store or paying bills or folding the laundry, and all of a sudden you thought to yourself, it'd be kind of nice to have sex later, and I'm kind of feeling a little frisky. That is okay if that doesn't happen to you. That's called spontaneous sexual drive. And in this picture, that's green. Okay? If you're telling me that does not happen, I never feel that way, I have low sex drive, I'm here to tell you that's okay. You're normal. It's okay. We have ways that we can deal with that. Okay? Now, what we're going to work on instead is something called responsive sexual desire. Okay? Responsive sexual desire occurs in about 80% of women, or let's say the opposite. Spontaneous sexual desire only happens in about 20% of women. That means 80% of women are walking around the world not spontaneously desiring sex. 80% of women are walking around the world not spontaneously desiring sex. So if you're here today taking this class and you're saying, I'm walking around the world and I could go 6 months without desiring sex, I'm here to tell you, join the club. 80% of women are walking around the same way. There's nothing wrong with you. Okay? So what we want to work on instead is something called responsive sexual desire. That means that you're responding to something. So let's say you have some emotional intimacy. Let's say you go on a date. Let's say you play a game together. Let's say you take a vacation together. Let's say you're taking a walk together. You're talking. That would be emotional intimacy. Okay? From that emotional intimacy, maybe there's a sexual stimulus. Maybe there's a touch. Maybe there's a hug. Maybe you're sitting on the couch together. Maybe he's rubbing your back, or you get in the shower together, or maybe there's a back massage. That would be a sexual stimulus. Okay? So first you're spending time together, and then there's a little bit of a stimulus. A stimulus means something has to happen to you. A smell, a touch, a taste. Something is happening that stimulates your sexual memories and receptors, okay? Now, when there's that touch or when there's that stimulus, now we're experiencing an increase in arousal. Okay, so let's say your partner is rubbing your back, and let's say you that's a gas pedal thing for you, and you feel like, that feels really nice. So now your arousal starts to climb, and it feels like, that feels good. And after 5-10 minutes, it feels even better. And you're getting more relaxed and it feels really pleasant. That would be an example of sexual arousal happening. Okay? Then the question is, do you have any sexual desire? Then. So after sexual stimulus, after sexual arousal, after something has happened. So again, what is this that could happen? Maybe there's hugging, maybe there's kissing, maybe there's laying in bed and just like facing each other or spooning. Maybe there's taking a shower together, holding hands, walking together. There's something that's happening that stirs arousal for you. Now, does your body respond by having some desire? That's what we call responsive sexual desire. Now, if that happens, That's great. There's no problem. That's normal. So now your body is responding and you engage in emotional and physical satisfaction. And then around and around we go in the positive cycle of sexual intimacy, the sexual response cycle. Okay? As far as I'm concerned, when the hugging starts, the touching starts, the emotional intimacy starts, the rubbing of the back starts, the walking and holding hands starts, the any of that, when that starts, there is zero expectation that you should have spontaneous sexual drive. And this is where most people go wrong. Most people believe that there's something inherently wrong with engaging in sexual activity, beginning to engage in sexual activity when they feel no desire. And I'm here to tell you it's the opposite is true. The opposite is true. When you are open and motivated, and you engage in some emotional intimacy that leads to sexual stimulus, then the desire will evolve. And that's responsive sexual drive. It's completely okay if you're walking around the world and you don't have spontaneous desire that leads to initiating sexual activity. And it's okay. Many men have more spontaneous sexual desire because of added levels of testosterone. And so you might find that men have higher spontaneous sexual drive, and that's okay. And if you're a woman out there and you're taking this class and that's not you, there is nothing wrong with you. And that's also okay if there are men out there who have low spontaneous drive, because it's also healthy to engage in the sexual response cycle and engage in touching and sexual stimulus and emotional intimacy, and we can get there. You can get to a state of more arousal and sexual desire. Okay? So I just really want you to know that you should not wait for spontaneous sexual desire. Instead, there is nothing wrong with you if you get into bed and you're feeling nothing, zero, zip. You get into bed, but you're feeling open. Maybe it would be nice emotionally to connect. Okay, so start hugging, start connecting, and see if you can get into it. Nothing wrong with you. Well, now you might be saying to me, well, but hey, Rivka, in the beginning of our relationship, I did have spontaneous desire and I did really want to be with my partner. And what I have, and I'm here to tell you today, is that that is called new relationship energy peak. Now, remember how we were talking about spontaneous versus responsive sex drive? In this model, we're calling it receptive is responsive and active is spontaneous. Okay? Now, if you notice in the new relationship energy peak, there's a, a, a peak that sex drive goes up for men and women. And now you're in the post new relationship energy. Now you're on the down curve. But what I want to point out to you is that before the peak, you were at baseline. And your baseline was your baseline sexual desire. And all that happened was that you experienced a surge and then you went back down to baseline. Okay? So for if I had a penny, a nickel for every time somebody told me, but in the beginning of my relationship, that's not the baseline. The baseline is before the new relationship energy peak. Okay. So if this happened to you and you're telling me, I wanted my partner, I had a desire, I felt like intrinsic feelings of desire, I would say that's great. And that's called new relationship energy peak. And that's not baseline. Your baseline came before that, and now you're just back at your baseline. And so I hope that this helps you, calm your feeling that something is wrong now. Okay. So there's so many things that can create low responsive or spontaneous sexual desire. For example, anxiety, trauma, low self-esteem, um, social, cultural, religious expectations and norms, lack of sex education, guilt, shame, family of origin issues, physical issues, medications, birth control pills, insomnia, hormonal issues, um, pelvic floor dysfunction, relational issues, relational conflict, fighting a lot, um, problems with balance of power or the types of sex that you have. All these types of things play a role in your sexual desire. So if you want to take a look at this chart, you might write down or highlight, what seems to be behind your stuff. Do you have a history of trauma? Are you very anxious in general? Do you have some baggage with your family of origin issues, or you went into your sexual relationship very unprepared, or do you have some bad early sexual relationship history? Just think about some medical conditions, medications. What's going on for you that could play a role? And that might give you a little bit of a jumping off point to kind of think about what's your gas and your brake pedals, right? And for men, it's a lot of the same issues. I have another screen here for men. So, for example, some things, rigid performance expectations, hormonal issues, medications, age, vascular problems, low self-esteem, anxiety, depression. Okay. Now, if you think back to one of the stories that we talked about in the beginning, we talked about pity sex. We talked about duty sex. Okay, let me talk to you a little bit more about what this means. In my experience, higher desire spouses often present as wanting sex all the time or never being satisfied with the amount of sex. But instead of working on the quality, they usually chase quantity. This makes the lower desire spouse feel like the quantity is just too much, and they get into a pattern of pity sex or duty sex. And it's just to put a band-aid on the problem. And what happens is you just end up making the problem worse. Okay? The higher desire spouse's erotic needs are unfulfilled, and the lower desire spouse's desire sex even less because it's such a chore and it's not enjoyable or pleasurable for the lower desire spouse. Okay? So, what is the definition of pity sex or duty sex? That is when we get into bed and we decide, okay, fine, let's do this. You're agreeing. And you say to yourself or out loud, but I'm not trying to get aroused. I'm not trying to get into it. Okay? I'm I'm just make it fast. And people will say this. People will flat out say to me, or they'll say to their partner, just make it quick. Or like, just fine, just make it quick. That is an indication of that this is pity sex. I'm not trying to get aroused. I'm not trying to get into this. So just do this fast. That is a really bad idea. It's bad for both parties. You're putting a band-aid on the problem. It's bad for the higher desire spouse because they really do not get their emotional needs met from this type of sex. And it just leaves them feeling empty and alone and wanting more. So that's unfulfilling. And it's bad for the lower desire spouse because it's makes them wire the neurons together in their brain of sex is annoying, sex is bad, sex is just for him. It's not for me, it's not pleasurable, and it makes you like sex less and less. So this is a problem that I find people get into, and it is a bad idea, and we have to dig ourselves out of this hole. So I'm here to tell you, don't have bad sex. We all want to feel loved, wanted, desired, and to have our erotic needs fulfilled. People do not only want a release. Somebody once told me that they felt like they were have at a gas station. So the man was the car and or no, sorry, the man was the gas station and the woman was the car. So the woman would drive up, he would insert himself, he would ejaculate, and then she would drive away. And he felt like he was having gas station sex. He was the gas station and he just ejaculated inside of her and she drives off. And this does not feel good for the man, and this does not feel good for the woman. So this was a lose-lose. So ever since this person told me this, I put that in the graphic because it was memorable to me, to really remember that this is very, very dissatisfying sex for both parties. And this is what pity sex feels like. So it's not pleasurable and enjoyable and fulfilling our emotional and erotic needs for either party. I would recommend making sex more pleasurable and connected. So if you can work more on getting relaxed, more on having agency and control, and more arousal. If you work on pleasure and connection, then you will succeed. So maybe your spontaneous sexual desire is still going to be very, very, very low. And if it was left up to you, maybe spontaneously you would only desire sex once every 6 months, and there's very little we can do about that. But when you engage in sexual activity, can you make it more pleasurable and connected? Can you work on feeling more relaxed? Can you work on relaxation? Can you work on arousal? Can you work on connection? If you work on those things, it will be much better for you, for both of you. Now, one of the things that I notice is that a lot of people have a sense of anxiety or panic or nervousness when the other person initiates sex, and they feel like, wow, the lion is chasing me and I need to, and it feels like maybe their husband is the lion, that he wants something from me and I'm feeling pursued. Okay. That is an activation of the sympathetic nervous system. And that is not conducive to sex. What we want is to feel like we're here at this lake. And we're feeling so relaxed because pleasure evolves in a safe and secure environment where we feel relaxed, invited, and calm. Let me say that again. Pleasure evolves in a safe and secure environment where we feel relaxed, invited, and calm. And so if we can think about, what do I feel like? And do I feel pursued and pressured and chased? And how do we change that dynamic? We want to work on feeling relaxed. We want to work on slowing things down. We want to work on not having pitting sex and enjoying and working on the pleasure and the connection. Okay? We're going to work on those different sections of the pie. If we look at the pie, the three circles that we talked about, we want to have motivation, right? We want to have motivation to engage in sex. We're not looking to increase spontaneous sexual desire. We could work on scheduling sexual activity maybe 1 or 2 times a week. And this is a time when we're engaging in relaxing touch to start. Okay? We're not jumping into sex. We're starting the process, maybe with the emotional intimacy, or maybe with that sexual stimulus, maybe the hugging or kissing or holding hands or back rub. We're seeing if could I could I get there? Could my feelings evolve? Could I get some arousal? Can that develop? And if I get aroused, will I want to have sex then? Try to think about when you do feel desire or pleasure. Okay? When is a good time for you? What are the times of your life or the day or the week that are better for you? And maybe work on making those things more intentional. More sleep, more foreplay. Okay? Think about what you need for more awareness of your sensory pleasures. Maybe you need that hot bath first. Maybe you need a massage. Maybe you need to do some yoga. Maybe you need some time by yourself. Okay, take a bath, take a shower. Maybe you need a buffer, a transition time between being with your kids and working. And then you need a little bit of time maybe by yourself. And then get yourself in the right mindset and put some intention, motivation into it, not relying on sexual desire. We're not relying on spontaneous sexual desire. And that's what I want you to take away from this today. We're not waiting for sexual desire to strike us. Instead, we're figuring out, what do I need? What do I need to go from this to enjoying sexuality? Maybe you need your hot shower, a bath, maybe you need a massage, maybe you need to put your phone and your computer in the other room and have like an hour of detox, maybe with your book. Maybe you need a little quality time together, just talking and hanging out and engaging with each other. Maybe you need a really long back rub first. And then maybe when that happens, you're feeling relaxed, you're feeling like you have choice in the matter, and maybe your sexual arousal will start to build. So here are some ideas for increasing your sexual desire or your gas pedal. Okay, intimate or erotic conversation, both inside or outside the bedroom, improving body image or your genital self-image, talking and sharing about sex and sexuality with select friends or others, like a support group. So these are some things that's definitely evidence-based that if you talk more about sex, think more about sex, this can help rev your engines a little bit. Have more time for some mindfulness, some yoga meditation. This can help you be more in touch with the pleasure and what feels good and that you're doing this for yourself, that what is good for about sex for you, not that you're doing this for your partner. You're not going to get anywhere thinking about that you are trying to have sex for them. We are thinking about how we can engage in sex, that this is something that's mutually pleasurable and feels good and connecting for both of you. There are some medications that can help. You can talk to your doctors about these things. Typically, I recommend non-medical means, but here are some things that some people use. So let's review back to Julie. Julie was the one that was having pity sex. So what is Julie going to do? She's going to have no more pity sex. And remember, the definition of pity sex is when she says, I'm not going to get aroused, I'm not going to try, and make it fast. That's pity sex. She's not going to do that anymore. She's going to engage in relaxing touch as a way to begin. She's going to move more slowly into romantic and then erotic touching. She's going to work on the pleasure and the connection. She's going to increase talking, intimacy, eroticism, sharing fantasies, talking about what feels good, focusing on her own pleasure, not focusing on her partner's pleasure. He should focus on her pleasure and not his own pleasure. So this is an example of that he might have to be more patient, that sex is not going to look like what it used to look like, where he's just fast. Instead, we're refocusing that we want to reprogram Julie that, hey, sex feels good for her. This is not just something for him. And what can they both think of that feels nice emotionally and physically? She should learn how to guide him and communicate what's nice for her. Explore why she has programmed herself to have sex for him, and share possibly with other select women their experiences of sexual pleasure, or maybe even reproductive experiences. When women get together and they talk about their reproductive experiences, with, their problems in this area, or their struggles in this area, or what has worked for them, this is something that can work well, that they feel bonding and they feel like they're sharing. And this really helps them engage actively and proactively and increase their sense of connection. Okay. And then we're talking about Sarah. Sarah was the one that didn't have spontaneous desire. Now, what we're doing with her is we're normalizing the responsive desire. Because if you think more back to Sarah's story, Sarah was not experiencing spontaneous sexual desire. But what I want to do for Sarah is I want to normalize, hey, that's okay. That's normal. Responsive sexual desire is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with you. We're going to emphasize pleasure and connection. We're going to increase talking, connection, sharing about what they enjoy sexually. She's going to schedule or plan sex so she can get out of that pursuer pursued pattern. And she's going to explore other ways for her to enjoy pleasure, her body, what feels good outside of sex. So this is an example where they're going to change their habits, and she's going to go into sex more well prepared, with a greater plan of like, hey, I'm gonna set this time aside and I'm gonna try to get into this. And that's good and healthy and normal. Here are some books that I suggest that I suggest to people. And if this was helpful, I recommend you watching some of my other classes. If they're not up already, they will be up. Some classes on arousal, some classes on orgasm, some classes on differences in desire. Okay, I have one on pain. If sex is painful, you're of course not going to desire it. So please watch that video if sex is painful. Okay, I hope this was helpful for you today. And if you need any more individualized attention, please reach out to our practice or a practice in the state in which you are located.